In today's training, we're going to go over the WIDA standards and the Can Do descriptors. The objectives of this training is to talk about what is WIDA, what are the WIDA standards, what is the access test, what are the access proficiency levels, what are model performance indicators or MPI, what are Can Do descriptors, and we'll briefly talk about using Can Do descriptors for grouping and differentiation. WIDA uses 5 standards. Standard 1 is the standard of social and instructional language. Standard 2 is the language of language arts. Standard 3, language of mathematics. 4, language of science. And 5, language of social studies. Our English language learners are expected to learn all of these languages and are assessed on these different languages on the access test. Generally, MPIs or can-do descriptors are separated into grade level clusters. There's usually a K cluster, grades 1 to 2, grades 3 to 5, grades 6 to 8, and a 9 through 12 cluster. There are 4 language domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Students are assessed in all 4 domains on the access test. So what is the WIDA Access for ELLs test? This test is administered to kindergarten through 12th grade students who have been identified as English language learners. It's given annually to monitor the student's progress in learning academic English. It meets the U.S. requirements for the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, for monitoring and reporting the ELLs progress toward English language proficiency. It corresponds to the WIDA English Language Development Standards. And it assesses all 4 language domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. There are 6 language proficiency levels. Level 1 is entering, Level 2 beginning emerging, Level 3 developing, Level 4 expanding, Level 5 bridging, and Level 6 reaching. When a child first comes to the country and has no English proficiency whatsoever, they're considered a Level 1 student. As they progress and acquire English proficiency, they move up in the levels. The student will be able to perform according to their level of English proficiency. For example, a Level 1 student might be able to understand pictorial or graphic representation of the language of the content areas. They might be able to communicate in words, phrases, or chunks of language when presented with one-step commands. A Level 3 student will understand general and some specific language of the content areas. They may be able to communicate with expanded sentences in oral interaction or written paragraphs. A Level 4 student will understand specific and some technical language of the content areas. And they'll be able to use a variety of sentence lengths of varying linguistic complexity in oral discourse. Let's take a look at the MPI, the Model Performance Indicator. This is an example in reading. A Level 4 expanding student will be able to compare narrative points of view in extended text using graphic organizers with a partner. Now, let's look at this even more closely. This brief explanation contains 3 elements that we can note. It has a language function, which is to compare. It has an example topic, which is narrative points of view in extended text. And it has the form of support, that is with a partner. And these are examples of listening and speaking MPI. For example, in listening, a Level 3 developing student may be able to follow directions, for example, create word families or word walls, in response to group reading of illustrated stories and trade books to show comprehension. In speaking, point of view, A level 2 student may be able to compare self with familiar persons, friends, family members, movie stars, using photographs, pictures, or graphic organizers, while a level 1 student would be able to describe self using words or gestures, for example, features, likes, and dislikes. In reading and writing, let's take an example in reading. A level 4 student would be able to identify self-monitoring and self-correcting strategies to increase fluency with visually supported text, whereas a level 1 student would be able to use cues for sounding out unfamiliar words with accompanying visuals. In writing, a level 1 student may be able to produce personal word phrase lists from labeled pictures and check with a partner for edits and revision, while a level 3 student will be able to edit and revise guided reading, for example, for the conventions and structures based on the teacher feedback. A level 5 student would be able to self-assess to edit and revise writing to produce final drafts. Can Do Descriptors. The link below brings you to the WIDA website for Can Do Descriptors. If you go on the website, you would be able to find different Can Do descriptors for different subjects and with very detailed information. Briefly, this is what the site looks like. If you scroll down, you can find Can Do descriptors for all of these key uses. And here, you can find Can Do descriptors name charts. What's the purpose of the Can Do descriptors? Can Do descriptors indicate what language ELLs can process or produce. They're used for differentiating instruction, planning lessons, assessing a student's progress, and helping teachers understand what their ELL students can be expected to do. Arthur is an English language learner. On the Access 2.0, he scored a composite of 3.5. Officially, he's a level 3 student, but he's halfway to being a level 4 student. Now, let's look a little more closely at Arthur's score on each of the different components. In reading, Arthur scored a 2.7, so he's level 2 in reading. He's close to a level 3, so when we teach Arthur, we would try to teach him towards level 3 skills. In writing, Arthur scored 3.6, which means he's level 3 on his way to a level 4. So for his writing, we would instruct him at a level 4. In listening, Arthur scored a 6.0, which means that his listening skills are excellent. For the listening domain, we would teach Arthur like any native language speaker. For the speaking domain, Arthur scored 2.3. That puts him in a level 2. Maybe Arthur needs some work in his pronunciation or enunciation skills. Whatever the issue, in his speaking, Arthur is a level 2 student. Let's take a look at this grade level 1 and 2 cluster. For listening, a level 1 student may be able to follow modeled one-step oral directions, such as find a pencil. They may be able to point to real-life objects reflective of content-related vocabulary or oral statements. A level 3 student may be able to follow modeled multi-step oral directions. They may be able to classify according to descriptive oral statements. Let's take a look at speaking. A level 2 student will use the first language to fill in the gaps in oral language. This is called code switching, which means that they will use a combination of their native language and English. They'll repeat facts or statements. They'll describe what people do from action pictures, for example, jobs of community workers. They'll compare real-life objects, for example, smaller, biggest, and a more advanced level 4 student may be able to ask questions for social and academic purposes, participate in class discussions on familiar social and academic topics, retell stories with detail, and sequence stories with transitions. You may get to the WIDA website using this address. Remember that the purpose of the Can Do descriptors are to help you in the differentiation of your classroom work. It tells you what a student at different proficiency levels can do. And this should be used as a guide for the expectations that you have of your English language learners. Thank you.